I found out my family only had kids to replace each other. I always felt like my childhood was rehearsed. Same clothes every year, same routines, same rules, like my parents were following a script. I never questioned it until I found a cracked box behind the basement boiler. Inside were photos of a kid who looked exactly like me, but taken in places I've never been. Some were years older than I am now. Some younger. All identical. Digging deeper, I found old home videos. Different houses. Different families in the background. But the kid acted exactly like me. Same habits, same way of moving, like they were trained to be the same person I became. Near the back of the basement were bins of clothes in my size, dozens of duplicates. Same shirt, same jacket, same sneakers. Like someone was preparing multiple versions of the same kid to live the same life. When I stepped outside to breathe, I noticed footprints in the dirt beside the shed. My exact shoe size, but smaller. Inside the shed was a cot and blankets, recently used. The air was warm, like someone had just left. Then I saw movement in the tree line. A figure my exact build, staring at me with this expression I've never seen on my own face. Not confused. Not scared. Resentful. They stepped back into the woods without making a sound, like they already knew the path. And in that moment, it hit me. My family wasn't raising one child. They were cycling through them. And whoever I just saw, they weren't the past version of me. They were the next. I didn't sleep the night. I saw the other version of me watching from the tree line. Every sound outside felt targeted. Every creak in the floorboards felt familiar in a way that terrified me. It wasn't fear of an intruder. It was fear of someone who knew how to move exactly like me. Someone who knew every mistake I would make before I made it. Someone who used to be me, at least in my family's eyes. By sunrise, I couldn't pretend my life was normal anymore. I needed answers, but not the kind that came from confronting my parents. I wanted the truth without the manipulation they had perfected for generations. I went back to the shed, this time more carefully, studying every inch of disturbed dust. The footprints weren't random. They created a pattern, circles, pacing, loops, like someone was rehearsing how to walk like me again. Behind the cot, I noticed deep scratches in the wood, like someone spent nights counting time and marks. The blanket still smelled warm, human, recent. I finally realized the shed wasn't just a hiding place. It was a waiting room. Whoever had been here wasn't passing through. They were preparing. I checked the woods next. The path the figure took wasn't random either. It was a clean line, straight toward the abandoned property behind our house, an old summer camp that closed years before my parents bought the land. The cabin doors hung open, leaves collected like graves at the threshold. I went inside. The air was stale and quiet, but not empty. On the floor were shoes in my exact size, worn in the same places mine were. A pillow that still held the shape of a head. A stack of food wrappers folded neatly like someone didn't want to leave a trace. And in the far corner, I found a blanket laid out like a bed. Whoever lived here had been watching my house for a while. But the part that hollowed me out was the map drawn in the dirt, lines scratched with a stick. My room. My parents' room. The shed. The basement entrance. Every point marked with careful accuracy. And in the center of the map was a small circle around the spot where I stood every morning tying my shoes. They weren't just watching. They were studying. The truth became clearer the longer I looked around. My family wasn't just cycling children. They were training them, testing them, preparing each one for an outcome that only one of us could fulfill. And I was the current one, the one living the active rotation, as cold as that sounded in my head. The others weren't failures. They were prototypes. I went back home and forced myself to explore the basement again. This time I found a panel I had missed before, slightly pushed in, probably by accident. Behind it was a crawl space filled with old suitcases. Inside each suitcase were personal items belonging to kids who looked like me. Bracelets, worn shoes, journals with whole sections torn out, photos with the faces scratched off. My family had been erasing lives for decades. For a moment, I understood why the other versions left or disappeared. It wasn't punishment. It was planned. They weren't allowed to become individuals. They weren't allowed to grow into someone without permission. But the one who watched me from the woods didn't disappear. They stayed. They wanted something. That night, the lights in the hallway flickered. I felt the air shift, the kind of shift that happens when someone walks by but nobody is there. I heard the faintest sound of breathing that wasn't mine. Slow, controlled, close. I stepped into the hallway and the house felt different. Wronged. Every door slightly ajar, like someone checked each room. I walked toward the living room and saw it immediately. Mud on the floor. Thin footprints. My size. But not recent, damp enough to be fresh, faint enough to be deliberate. They were inside. I searched the entire house, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. Every room was empty. No breathing. No footsteps. No signs of life. But in the kitchen, the back door was unlocked. That's when the realization hit. They wanted me to know. The final step of the rotation wasn't a replacement. It was a decision. The next morning, I waited in the backyard. Sunlight hit the woods slowly, revealing nothing at first. Then I saw movement, a shadow stepping from behind a tree. The figure stood exactly where they stood the first time. Same posture, same calmness. No expression of fear or confusion. Just quiet expectation. For a few long seconds, we stared at each other across the yard. Same height, same breath, same stance. Two versions of a life that my family treated like a project. And in that silence, without a single word exchanged, everything became clear. They weren't here to take my life. They were here to choose whether they wanted theirs back. But something changed. They didn't move closer. They didn't threaten. They simply turned around and walked away, deeper into the woods than before, disappearing for the last time, not because they were forced to, but because they decided to free themselves from the cycle. And just like that, I understood the truth my family never wanted me to know. The rotation wasn't real unless we accepted it. I wasn't a copy. I wasn't a replacement. I was the first one to refuse the script. And by leaving, the other version ended it too. They broke the pattern my parents built their lives on. For the first time, I felt something real. Not fear, not confusion, not guilt. Freedom. The rotation ended. Not because my family stopped it, but because we did.